Happy Tuesday, everybody. I think this is our first Tuesday webinar. So thank you for joining us. We have a really awesome speaker today, and we cannot wait to get this show on the road and ask her a couple questions. But first, my name is Andrew Whipp, and I am the lead creative and editor here at Greenbuzz Agency. I'm also joined by my friend and colleague for the first time, Amelia Oliver, the marketing specialist at Greenbuzz. Amelia, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thanks for that intro. I'm super excited to be here today.
Absolutely, as am I. As a quick aside, if any of our audience members somehow ended up here and don't know who we are or what we do, Greenbuzz Agency is a full-service production company based out of Old Town Alexandria, and we specialize in documentary, motion graphics, and branded content. So if you or your teams are curious about the process of making a video or are looking to tell your own story, please don't hesitate to reach out. Bringing it back around, though, today's webinar is the 9th in our Greenbuzz Agency webinar series, which was created to connect our community with thought leaders who can help us break down top-line strategy, best practices, and advice during these really tough times. So today, we're going to be covering the topic of making trade-offs in marketing, drive revenue while cutting costs. So if you're looking to shake up your marketing mix and bring some new ideas back to your teams, then you are absolutely in the right place. But before we begin, I just want to make sure that our audience knows what to expect from today's webinar and that everyone's familiar with the features on the platform. So some real basic housekeeping stuff. First, our webinar will be about an hour long, and in that hour, you're going to hear from our panelist, Meagan, who will present for about 30 minutes. And then afterwards, we'll have plenty of time for a live Q&A where we'll take audience questions. So if at any point you have questions for our speaker, there's a nifty Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen that you can use to send in those questions. And we'll do our best to get through all of those at the end of the presentation. And it's also not too late to invite any of your friends or colleagues to join. Just send them the link from the reminder email that you should have gotten earlier today. And we'll send out a copy of the presentation and the recording for everyone who registered. So now that we're with our panelist here, Meagan Eisenberg is the Chief Marketing Officer at TripActions. Before joining TripActions, Meagan served as the CMO for MongoDB and the VP of Customer Acquisition for DocuSign. And in just 1 year at TripActions, Meagan has grown the marketing team by 5 times its size and led TripActions to its ranking as G2's #1 travel management app. Thank you, Meagan, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. We are super amped to kick this off. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's jump into the good stuff. And Meagan, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. What a crazy and wild time to be in marketing, especially in tech. And for me, we're in business travel and expense management. So I'm going to dive in about really how we've addressed the current situation, how we've pivoted quickly, and what we can do in marketing today with the current constraints of work from home. And no more events are coming together. A little bit about my background. I've advised more than 25 companies, and certainly a lot of accumulation of best practices, pattern recognition, a mix of successes and failures. I've seen 12 successful exits and 3 failures going out of business of companies. And so with that, I'm going to apply some of that and have been applying some of those learnings in my current position at TripActions. When I was at MongoDB as our CMO for 4 years, we did a lot of rebuilding, taking multiple products to market, and even taking the company public in October of 2017. And Stanford GSB wrote a case study where I was the protagonist, and our CRO, Carlos De La Torre at the time, is in the case study with me as well, really looking at go-to-market. Interestingly enough, today's going to be a case study of what's occurred in really the last 3 to 4 months. And Carlos is now my partner in crime here at TripActions as our CRO. So let's dive in. A little bit about TripActions so you can understand where we're coming from. We are a new model for corporate travel and expense management. And as you can imagine, when coronavirus hit in March, we saw a huge impact to our business, our messaging, how we go to market, and really pivoted and started to build product. And we are all about protecting our travelers, controlling costs, and saving money for companies. So let's dive in. The unfortunate truth, companies found themselves unprepared in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. And if we look at, even if we want to dive into this even deeper, there was not only that, we had an added complexity because this is a health crisis and an economic one. Although if you look at the stock market today, you wouldn't necessarily think that. But if you look at the world and the economy and what we've seen in the news, retracting quarter over quarter, year over year, a lot of companies are seeing a sharp decline in their pipeline, in their revenue. They're more than ever having to figure out cost controls, getting their expenses down, getting their burn rate down. When I look across the portfolio of companies I advise, this is definitely top of mind. How do we continue to build and drive revenue, maintain our customers, keep our costs down? With a workforce that's remote, how do we keep them productive and ready? How do we deal with layoffs and furloughs? Specifically in our industry, travel and hospitality is seeing this a ton. We're in a recession, potentially on the way to a depression, and this impacts marketing's budget in a big way. And there's a Latin proverb that really came to mind at the beginning of this and still today. That's, if there's no wind, row. And all of us are rowing really hard. And I think we've been rowing really hard for 5 months and continue to do that to move the business forward. What did we have to do as a business, and what are most businesses having to do right now? Really, I would say the core 4 things. 1, focusing on customers is more important than ever that we deliver what they need. In the SaaS world, you are going to have renewals. You want to, bird in hand is worth more than in the bush, right? So how do we keep our customers happy, deliver value, and as they start to cut costs, don't be below the line where they decide they don't need you as a technology or a solution. You need to be driving value to them. That means you're either helping them drive revenue, you're reducing their costs for a business, or you're mitigating risk. So really focusing on what your customers need. 2, product market fit for the current environment. So our environment changed dramatically. If you think about it, people went from traveling a ton to no travel. And so there's a lot of things we did to support them as they made that transition. And as they come back up through business recovery, how do we help them create the policies they need to get back out in the market to protect their travelers and control costs? 3rd is cash preservation. I remember in March, my dad is an old tech guy that's been in the Valley a long time and multiple startups. He texted me and he said, "Love cash more than your mother." And I remember kind of smiling when I got that text, but it's true. If you don't survive the downturn, you won't be here. And in order to survive it, you need to control and preserve cash, which is a lot of CFOs and CEOs are focused on what they can do to get burn rate down to really ride out while building and hopefully taking market share in this environment if you survive it. And then, of course, employees. What are you doing to take care of your employees, keep them safe, mental health, all of that while the workforce is remote? So what did we do? If I dive in on what we did for our customers and product market fit, they cared about health and safety. If think back in March, it started out in Asia, but it went from Asia to parts of Europe to all of Europe to the US. And we had to quickly allow our travel managers to know exactly where their employees were, which we had availability to it, to communicate to them and to get them home quickly. And if you think about that, making sure you know where they are and getting them home is just the first step. The next slide really talks about, okay, you've located them, you've gotten them home, but what's next? And so we built our engineering team was very busy building integrations and APIs to Johns Hopkins, pulling in CDC data right into the travel manager's dashboard so they could quickly figure out what they need to shut down next and who was going to be impacted. Because in the beginning, we didn't know it would take over the world, and certainly not how quickly it would take over, because our past experiences dealt with things like SARS and very geo-specific things that weren't spreading as fast, but this quickly became a pandemic. So we had to get that information and block people from future travel. So we need to provide the reports so they could go, oh, someone's about to travel to Italy or to London, quickly reach out to them. They need to cancel their trip and block it. And so this really being able to monitor around the world and block future travel mattered. Then that also turned into blacklisting future travel. And prior to this, we didn't have that ability, but we quickly built it as a product. You could do it by continent, by country, by state, by city, giving that control right away to protect it. And then the next thing we had to do was really think about it. All mass cancellations, there's tens of millions of dollars in waivers and credits with airlines that you had to manage. So the next thing we built was all the reporting to track these waivers and then automatically apply it within the product. So if you think about it, what became very important was a very specific part of our product, but mattered a ton for our customers. And so the product quickly pivoted, which means our sales team, marketing message, and everything else needed to support that story. You'll see our approach to our customers in the market, we had to pivot immediately. So what did that mean to me as a CMO? I had to focus on three things. I had to focus on driving revenue while cutting costs. Driving revenue meant enabling the field with the right messaging and narrative based on what we were doing prior and what we needed to move to. Then enabling the sales and the CSM team, because we were not only building product for new customers, but for existing customers. I had to make sure our customer success team had the right messaging to enable travel managers to quickly support their employees and travelers. And then, of course, our future was dependent on building pipeline. So if I dive into the first thing, messaging, what did we have to do? Well, what's wrong with this picture? As you can see, pre-COVID, we were all about the user, and we're still all about the user, but we spent a lot of time messaging this amazing experience for the traveler we had built. And we have an amazing booking experience and an amazing TMC, which means we have travel agents that support you around the world and an app. But guess what? Was anyone having a great experience in March with travel? No. If you were out of the country or somewhere else, we needed you to get home. If you were about to travel, we needed to make sure you weren't going somewhere that wasn't safe. And frankly, that wasn't the sentiment or the tone that was in the market. We really needed to pivot to our other values that were about safety, security, and cost control. And we really had to provide the power to manage business travel and expenses, the power to manage the safety of your employees, the power to help them get the expensing done. So what did that mean? What was the impact of marketing? We had done a year of content. I'd been with the company a little over a year. We had rewritten our entire website, sales deck, training, all of that in the past year. I had about 5 days to update it so that we didn't put something out in the market that was tone deaf. So we started with the core messaging brief, which then went into our sales deck. It went into our website and our training. Our MDRs and SDRs were doing outreach, and their messaging was outdated. It was talking about a wonderful experience. We had to quickly pivot that. All our nurture emails, over 100 different emails had to be rewritten. Our social media had to be redone. We went through several different social media plays about social distancing. You know, our value prop was bringing people together for business. We needed to keep them apart and give them other ways to get business done. And, you know, you can see the whole list, all the different things. When you message, all these different channels have to be aligned and on track and not tone deaf. We also needed to have, you know, one thing that's really important for marketing is you need customers and social proof that you are delivering on your messaging and promise. And so we were working with customers like Complex that were starting to use these features, these tools. They were thankful. We were meeting with their customer advisory board, and we needed to highlight how they are now using the product with the active traveler map, country blacklisting. We had an emergency banner on the homepage. We had an incident management team. There was a lot of things that we were doing around duty of care and traveler safety that mattered. So now we got everything set up, rewritten and out there. Now let's shift to sales enablement. And that talks to, you know, the pitch and the value prop and the new path forward. We really need to talk about, okay, you've got your employees and travelers home. As we come out of this, what do we need to provide to you to run a business? T&E is the second largest expense pre-COVID for most companies. And so if you're in cash preservation mode, and you know you have to drive pipeline, your sales team is eventually going to get back out on the road. And we do have customers that are traveling today for critical, essential travel. And so making sure you had the right tools and messaging as you start to climb out and businesses recover, and making sure the sales team understands what matters today to the CFO, what matters to the travel manager and the lines of businesses in order to drive pipeline. With driving pipeline, let's talk about how we do that. Pre-COVID, these are, sort of the mindset. They were focused on their functions. They were focused on, we were talking about the value, how we bring value to a function like HR or CFO. We were really focused on direct mails and demo requests and events that drove a lot of pipeline, and scaling down on different tactics like paid search, partnerships, events. But now we were in a world that was distracted, uncertain. I call it the great pause. HR was trying to quickly figure out how to support people remotely. CFOs were trying to control cost. Sales teams were trying to figure out how to get deals done. Everyone was learning how to get on virtual conferencing like Zoom. So what did we need to do? Well, we need to become a trusted resource for these different functions. We needed to pivot what we were going to do in our tactics and messaging. If 40% of your budget was going towards in-person events, and now you can no longer do that, and a lot of your actual pipeline was being built from those, how do you quickly pivot? And it was a very distracted world. People were figuring out how to work from home, what the new mode, they're trying to get toilet paper. I mean, think about all the things they're trying to do, hand sanitizer, like very distracted world. And now that we're in this, I don't know that we're post-COVID, but now that we're in it and we're trying to learn how to come out of it, it really accelerated us as a trusted resource. And what do we need to do to bring value to our customers? And how do we get them the information they need to make better decisions and move their businesses forward? There's two things if you were to bucket marketing into two things. One, people have to know about you. So you have to cast this very wide net. There's an element of awareness, whether that's through paid search, articles, media. How do they find out about you? Customers actively talking about you, to a targeted capture of pipeline for sales, ABM, account-based marketing, direct mails, email marketing, targeting people specifically online with different topics that matter. So how do we balance that in the new world? That's this question. We're 6 feet apart, working from home, and we can't come across as tone-deaf marketers. I remember LinkedIn was filled with people complaining about how an SDR had reached out in a ridiculous way that didn't make sense in today's world, how they were getting these obnoxious emails, how, don't people understand the world we're dealing with right now? This is not my top priority. So how do we address that respectfully and not a tone-deaf way, but, we have something that the world needs and people will need moving forward. So how do we do it in the right way? And the next slide is a funnel slide that I have used for over a decade. And what it's showing you from the left side is how people enter. That's sort of the more awareness side. As they come into your funnel and you bring them through the buying process, below it is what are the different tactics that we typically use in the different stages. The left being things like I mentioned, PR, analyst relations, social media, email marketing, SEO, advertising. And then once they're in the funnel, how do you educate them? How do you answer the questions they have to make a buying decision? And then at the end is how do you keep them as customers and get them to evangelize and advocate for you? And all of a sudden, the mix that was in this was limited. Direct mail certainly had to change because you're not in the office. So now you've got to figure out, well, how do I send it to someone's house respectfully and keep their privacy? They have to actually opt in and provide you that information in a confidential way. Clearly, trade shows aren't happening. You can't bring them together for luncheons. You're not doing seminars or open houses. You're not taking them to a nice sporting event to build a relationship with them. Dinners, roundtables gone. Traverse was our user conference last year that we saw a lot of good building relationships with our customers and prospects and bringing a community together, gone, and regional customer forums, all gone. So what do we do? Well, let's first talk about, if we have two things where we build brand and the next one is targeted ABM, what do we have for brand? I've crossed out the things we don't have. We still have online. We still have the ability to deliver ads and display. we still have the ability to make our customers heroes and deliver on reviews. If you're going to have make a buying decision, you're going to go online. You can go to G2 and look at the different grids to buy software, and there's other players in that space. You're going to look to your peers. Certainly, I'm always talking to other CMOs to figure out what they're using, how they're addressing this. Well, for us, we're targeting CFOs and travel managers. They're going to be having these discussions as well. So what are we doing to create environments for them? There's certainly stuff, the press was all about travel. It was all about hospitality. It was all about getting people home. So how do we tap into that? How do we provide solutions and help people talk about it? The other thing is community. What we realized, we had not set up a community yet, and we quickly went out and acquired a community product that allowed us to really acquire them in 48 hours, stand them up, and start bringing influencers. And it didn't look that pretty. We stood it up very quickly, but at the same time we were acquiring the technology, we were creating the content and topics and launched. And then within a week, we made it look a lot better. We organized it better, but you can go see it at community.tripactions.com. And we brought in, it was open to anyone. You could ask any question, and things, it started out with, what do we know about coronavirus? What are the symptoms? What do we know about shelter in place? What countries, cities, states are shelter in place? What do we know about vaccines and policies and waivers? There's all these questions in the space. What better way than to provide a forum that builds trust with the community you want to be working with now and in the future? And we know that in times of recession and depression, people go back to school. People get laid off, furloughed, and it becomes a more competitive marketplace. So we want to retool, we want to refine our skills, learn, and come out best suited and competitive in the marketplace for jobs. And so people are going back to community college. Community college isn't open, but could we stand up and run an LMS, which we did. We also bought and launched, we bought technology to run Talent LMS. We bought it, we implemented it, and we kicked off courses in April. So it took us about a month to get the first set of courses set up. Now we have 28 courses, and we certify travel managers on best practices, policies around travel and expense management. So really rallying the team to create good content that allowed us to be consultants, that allowed us to be a trusted resource, that allowed us to better the community and help them and really bond with our brand. We wanted to add value and help. And we also launched some things around Pass the Plane, which I'll talk to on the next slide. But content mattered. Having relevant, because people are online, they can't meet you in person, but they're searching, they're reading, they're trying to learn more. And so we really went heavy on content. The next slide talks about a program we launched called Pass the Plane. One of the things we were feeling, certainly the industry and travel did several layoffs. We did layoffs back then. We also had to furlough some folks. We were feeling disconnected from our colleagues, and we were trying to think, how do we connect? How do we do something? We're at home with our kids. We were homeschooling. I have 3 kids. And I remember we were making paper airplanes, and the kids had so much fun, and they were folding it and running and throwing it. And we thought, what if we launched it and started passing it to employees? So, I built a plane. I passed it to a colleague that was in Seattle, who passed it to a colleague that was in Southern California, and we connected it via video. So we were, socially distanced, but connected online. We launched it with our employees, and we started launching it with our customers. Then we started seeing partners get involved, and we had over 10.7 million in reach, and just an amazing way to connect over community and to have partners involved. You can check it out. It's still live. There's a group on Facebook called #PassThePlane. You can see it on LinkedIn, even social. We have it on Twitter as well. But people got really creative. I was really impressed. And it's one of those things that you can do as a brand, because it was it's a sort of a scary, sad time, yet we're humans and we do believe in the need to connect. And so it just gave people away. I even created one and sent it to my dad, who was socially isolating and felt remote, he's obviously in his 70s, and he's a social person now who's trapped at home. He built it and sent it to my nephew in Albuquerque. And so it was just a great way to go across people, families, employees. And so what can you do from a marketing standpoint to bring people together and lift some spirits? And I think this was a really great campaign that helped lift spirits at that time. Those were all about what can we do from a brand awareness, knowledge, content, media, to now, how do I get pipeline and people for the sales team to be communicating that are the right targets in market now. We weren't able to do the building of relationships, as I mentioned, in events and in person. But what we found amazing is people had questions and wanted to come together, and we kicked off office hours. They started out the first month and a half were weekly, and now we're still running them every other week. But I'm very impressed. We're able to get CFOs every other week, 80 plus CFOs coming on. We have a topic, but we let it go wherever it's at. We don't allow media or anyone in it. It's all about CFOs asking questions and other CFOs answering. And we're creating that forum for them. It's kind of like meetups, but meetups online. And we do it with CFOs. We do it with travel managers. We held a couple for HR as they're trying to figure out new policies in this world, risk management and procurement. So what a great way. And then as we created value, they also learned about us as a company, and several of them have entered our pipeline and closed as customers. So once again, creating value in a very targeted approach for specific personas to come together to answer questions that they have. The other thing is we really started to look at our funnel, and we had what technologies, what's working, what's not working, what's resonating, what does the sales team need, being very specific and personalized. So budgets got cut, cash preservation, right? If we think back to the beginning, we lost budget. How do we become very targeted and specific with budget? So we use technology like Terminus to focus on our top target accounts and only show ads and landing pages for those specific accounts. And then we doubled down on our persona messaging, very targeted. What do CFOs care about? Cost control, visibility, and the ability for them to drive revenue and mitigate risk of employees traveling if it's not safe. HR, mitigate risk, take care of employees, make sure you have the right messaging. Travel managers, how do you put the right policies in place to make sure people aren't traveling unless it's essential and traveling where it's safe? So we focused on that. Here is some really great examples of how we became and continue to strive to be a trusted resource. We also launched a podcast in the last 4 months called Open for Business, where we have brought in travel experts, mental health and wellness experts, industry experts, airlines, our partners. We talk with hotels and as I mentioned, the airlines. We also created workshops and tools. So we brought in agencies like Festive Road, who are experts in setting up policy and selecting travel management. And they created workshops to help people figure out new policies moving forward. We created persona-based wiki resource pages, which I still go to and look today, that aggregates all the active resources. We have one for travel managers and we have one for finance executives and professionals. We launched, as I mentioned, the Academy, where we have over 28 courses now, and you get certifications for EAs that are supporting executives traveling and travel managers, and then a persona-based calculator, ROI calculators for finance to figure out waiver credits and the impact to the bottom line and the cost that they have to carry until they can use those waivers in travel. All things that they were caring a lot about that really helped our customers, but also showed us as a trusted resource to help them through this time. There's no time more than now as a true test for marketers. You're either a revenue driver or a cost center. And if you're a cost center in a recession and a depression, that's not good. You're going to take the cuts first. You're going to lose budget. And you're going to lose people. You have to align yourself to driving revenue, and you have to be able to show how you're delivering it and measure it. Because you really can't afford to be the latter. So we've been focused on driving revenue while keeping our costs really low. And that's what I wanted to share today. and our case study that's live and living. And as we come out of this, we plan to bring, a new T&E solution to the world on one platform that helps businesses get back to business.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I appreciate all your insights there, and I think now we can transition over to the Q&A, which I would love to kick off, and I think Amelia might chime in as well with a couple of questions. But just a reminder for everybody who's currently in the webinar that we do have that Q&A feature at the bottom, so please don't hesitate to ask any questions that are on your mind. But while we wait for some of those, you mentioned keeping revenue up while keeping the costs low. But I also see that you guys are generating all these really cool new tools to differentiate yourselves and help pivot. How do you do those things? Because they kind of seem at odds to me that, you're putting all this time and energy into really like developing all these new awesome tools that didn't exist before, but then at the same time, you're trying to keep your costs low.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good question. We went very heavy and focused on content, and everyone became a content creator. So when I had to reduce headcount, if you think about it, you're not doing events anymore. So you're reducing your event headcount, and your budget cuts are coming. Field events are expensive, at
Yep.
least 40% of your budget. So that's where you're cutting costs. You're cutting headcount and costs on the event side of it. And so the resources I really focused on were those that could create content. And we just went heavy on that. We had to. And so we thought, okay, what do people need? What do they care about? We worked with partners that were in this space, and we have the knowledge within the company. It was how do we quickly harness it
Yep.
and get the team focused. And that's what the team did, and definitely proud of their ability to execute. There was some very long weekends and long nights, and we continue to have long weekends and long nights as we're rowing. We've got to work hard, row hard, and create the content that people are looking for so we can capture them. And I think more than ever for us, it's a time to take market. We're very focused. We didn't let any of our engineers go. We're building product. We're understanding the needs of the market and building that, and then making sure the market knows we have it for them. It's not you got to execute in this time. And I think for those that are focused on executing and keep going, they will come out of this quite strong.
And how did you figure out like what people's needs were? Were you looking around at competitors as well? Were you doing like focus groups? Like, how did you figure out kind of what your community needed?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a customer advisory board that we were meeting with regularly, and we definitely bumped that up. We have our customer success managers are very close to our customers and supporting them. They were collecting feedback. Product was very aligned with the engineering team. So getting and looking at feedback from our customer advisory board, from our customers broadly, in direct communications on what they needed, what we were hearing in the field and the sales team, what was needed, and then quickly building. I mean, that's the benefit of being a startup. We were 1,200 people. We had to let go about 300, but we're still 900 people. We're very agile. We're 5 years old. We don't have legacy technology. We're built on modern technology. So engineering can build very quickly. They're very agile to the needs. So our competitors, I would say, for the most part, went quiet. They are encumbered by legacy technology and infrastructure. They're not, that's the benefit of being agile, and why you see disruption in a market. This market hasn't been disrupted in over probably 25 years. And so it's definitely ripe for that. This is a horrible experience for any of us to go through, I think. But it's also an opportunity if we execute well and we're agile and we have preserved cash to get through it. We're also very well positioned. We had taken funding in July, 250 million, and we secured another round of funding, convertible to IPO, about a month and a half ago. That gives us more than 300 million to sustain 1 to 2 to 3 years downturn. and continue to build product and come out of this stronger. A lot of companies actually come out of recessions. A lot of startups take markets because they're focused, they can make it through, where legacy players don't make it through the downturns because they're encumbered by outdated technology. They can't move the ship fast enough.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And we also have an audience question coming in that asks, when did you start changing the message, which month, and how long did it take to make this decision? Were there divided opinions of what should be going on moving forward?
It was within a week. I mean, we could see, if you think about it, because we're in travel, we got hit probably 2 weeks to 4 weeks before tech companies. We could see travel start to decline in Asia. Then we started to see it in Europe. As it was spreading around the world, we probably had a 2 week advantage over most of the issues that were coming. We knew we had to build product quickly. Our customers needed data and insights in order to protect their employees. So it was immediate that engineering started building. I remember the Friday, it was hitting, and Friday the CEO pulled us together and said, we're building this week, and Meagan, we need to launch this Monday. Sales needs to be enabled, CSMs need to be enabled. And it was just we started building out the launch and go to market and what was needed over the weekend. And then as we were doing that, we're like, wow, we need to update everything. And you audit everything, you assign everything, and you go. So there wasn't a lot of debate. It was very clear what we needed to do in order to help our customers, and then in order to get through the current environment. We had no idea on timeline. I would say back then we thought we'd start to pull out of this in May and June, and so we were moving fast and swift, as startups do. I think also our culture is one. For a 5-year-old company to have 4,000 customers, the growth that we had, we've gone from 400 or 500 people to 1,200 people in a year. To have that kind of growth and scale, you've got people that move fast. And we're very much well suited to address this. And we have a very strong leadership team and CEO who was focused. He was in tune with our customers, with our board, and was making decisions fast. And just, was leading the ship.
And kind of going back to that question of everyone being a content creator in the space and being a thought leader, have you found anything like that there's been Zoom fatigue, or that your audience is becoming less engaged as this has kind of dragged on for longer than we've anticipated?
I mean, I think in general, there is fatigue being online for sure. So that's where the fun part of marketing comes in, right? We've got to get creative. Whether you're creating a creative environment, whether you're sending Uber Eats to them, whether you're teaching them a new skill that's fun, as well as teaching them about your business. So I think one, creativity steps in. Two, people will always gravitate towards something that provides value to them. So you need to understand, what do they need? They're going to sit on a webinar. They're going to join an academy if it gets them further along on their goals. And so, if you're going to create just content to create content, that's not going to help you. But if you're going to be very specific and understand the needs and then create the content they need, nobody's going to be fatigued by something they need.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We have another question here from the chat. Looks like, after we get back to, quote, normal, do you see marketing events mostly coming back? And what about sales travel?
Yes and yes. So I definitely see, I don't know in the next year we're going to see big conference halls, but people need to build relationships. People need people. As soon as a competitor encroaches on a deal or has an edge, you're going to travel in sales. You're going to build relationships. There's nothing like breaking bread or having dinner with someone and getting to know them as a human that it's a lot harder to do online. And people will travel. We already have customers traveling. We have engineers in the field, in retail. Think about, we have stores that are traveling, addressing the store needs, setting things up. We've got, car engineers going around fixing cars. We've got healthcare traveling to address the needs of what's going on health-wise. We have financial folks traveling to take care of high clients. So yes, this will come back. People need to have the right things in place to feel safe. It'll come back differently. People will wear masks. People will keep distance. Maybe we may not shake hands. Maybe we'll meet in open air places. I'm definitely researching where can we meet with people outdoors? Where can we, what things are more likely to happen? You know, the Ritz-Carlton over in Half Moon Bay has a beautiful outdoor setting where you can be outside, fresh air, have a conversation, network, and do that, right? What are the outdoor venues that you can go be at that allow you to have a meal or a dinner or something? We're going to change the way we come back together, but nothing can replace the in-person connection that accelerates business. There was a study by I think Oxford that said for every dollar we spend on travel, it nets $12 in revenue. That's because relationships facilitate and accelerate business and deals. And that will be the case. And so when we have a vaccine out or a way to be safe or a way, we just wrote a letter to government with several of our of the industry and competitors included, talking about in order to get back on track, we need access to data, we need safety measures in place, we need tracking, we need a sharing of information so we can get out there and feel safe and know what we need to do to move forward. And all of that is because we need to be able to get businesses moving. We saw a huge decline in the economy because people are trapped and stuck in homes, right? So I certainly see the future is going to be based on people traveling. And frankly, the world is fun and exciting, and maybe personal travel comes back first. I flew to the East Coast with my family about a month and a half ago. We've had other travel going on. People are driving, there's a lot of domestic, certainly still travel happening, and people are opting to drive if it's within 5 hours versus fly. And those are the beginning steps. But I think it's just proof that we'll eventually get back to travel.
And I want to go back to one of your earlier slides where you talked about casting a wider net. What kind of advice would you give to maybe a smaller company that is creating great thought leadership content and is having a lot of engagement with that content, but doesn't know how to kind of amplify their audience?
Yeah, so I mean, that's where it comes down to influencers. They have the audience you want. Have you figured out who your influencers are? Is it media and press? Can you tap into a story that matters do you know the writers in your space? Who's the writer that focuses on your space at TechCrunch or Forbes or Wall Street Journal, or, for us, BTN, Focusrite, the tech pubs, the trade pubs, the mainstream pubs. You need to know who writes about your space, what they care about, and are you providing them good, interesting stories with customers and things that are something they want to write about. That's one way to definitely get your message out. Every time we get mainstream article written, we had one by Forbes, we see massive traffic to our site and people trying to learn about what we're doing. So that's one, understanding who to target. Two, there are writers and influencers in the space on social media. Who is the influencer in sales? Have you tapped into them? Lars Nielsen, Jill Rowley, Nancy Narden, they're all focused on sales technologies and tools. Do they know about your product? Have you briefed them on it? Because if you brief them and they write about it, all of a sudden all the people that follow them know about it and you're getting in front of your target audience. There's analysts, IDC, there's Gartner, there's Forrester, there's G2. Are you putting content? Are you getting reviews where people go and read with these analysts? RedMonk, depending on your space, you have different analysts that write about it. You should make sure, even as a small company, that doesn't cost money to go brief analysts, and they want to know about the up and coming technologies and products that are out there that makes them more relevant. And they know all the time companies are getting disrupted. And if anything, they want to know the next disruptor to write about. They want to be the first to see it and show it. So you've got to tap into that. And then they will bring the audiences you're trying to get into.
Gotcha. Awesome. We have another question in the chat here from Morton. It says, how do you think a company can grow bigger while remaining agile? Which is a pretty, kind of broader question, but I am curious, 900 people, I think was what you said you're currently at. That's still a pretty big company. But obviously compared to some other companies, that looks very agile. So you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it starts at the top. It starts on understanding the strategy and the goals of the company, and every single function and executive aligning around that and executing on it. And if it changes, then you guys align around it and execute on it. So to be agile, you've got to start at the top, and everyone has to understand their role and then go execute. So for us, as the market started to change, as the environment changed, we met a lot as a senior leadership team and really looked at, with data, what are our customers needing? Sales, what are you hearing? CSMs, what are you hearing? Product team, what are we looking at? Engineering. And then we, as we decided where we were focused, I mean, we launched TripActions Liquid, our corporate payments card, the week before COVID hit. So what a time to launch. And things, were hectic, and we focused very much on our travel product because that's what our customers needed. Now, as they're starting to do more domestic travel or, driving, we're focused on what do they need from a rental car standpoint. They still need payments. They still need expensing. There is a large expense management market. How are we serving that? And as they start to build back out, how do we provide one platform? So, really looking at what the market needs, aligning the teams to build it, execute it, and take it to market.
Gotcha. And I saw a question pop up in the Q&A about podcasts, and I think Isaiah had said he kind of notices that everyone's starting a podcast. What are other alternatives? I had a question too to kind of add to that, which is I think it's awesome that companies and organizations are creating their own content, and some of it are doing through podcasts. I was curious how it's like starting a podcast in such a saturated space right now, and how you guys are going about promoting your podcast and building up an audience for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we've got to tap into the channels that people are tuning into. And right now, that's podcasts, that's webinars are more popular than ever. Certainly, even we think of fatigue online, that's, building content. So I think podcast is a popular channel. How do you get it out there? I mean, you've got to have content people care about, and you got to have speakers and guests on it that people want to hear about. So the topic matters and the speaker matters. It's kind of back to the influencer. If you get an amazing influencer on there on a topic people care about, you're going to get a lot of people tuned in. And if you do it right, they'll come back for the next one. So I think you have to be very thoughtful on what content, what's your content calendar? What are you going to talk about? And, getting those influencers to also promote it to their channels, having them tweet out what's coming, what they're talking about, what they're excited about, what they see. All of that starts to amplify your message. And you have to keep it fresh. You can't just do one or two and expect it to take off. You have to keep building that momentum and promote it where possible, or join other people's podcasts that have a good following, that are an audience that you care about.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. And I'm just wondering, are there behavioral trends or changes that you're seeing that you think should be or will be incorporated into a longer term marketing strategy, just going beyond COVID?
I think one thing that I think will always live on is, it sounds cheesy to say, but surprise and delight. The creativity of marketing. There is a lot of noise. Every time you find a new channel, eventually it gets noisy. So you can never stop being creative and figuring out what's needed. And part of that is also understanding what gets your attention. I'm always challenging my team to think about what got them to open the email, what got them to research something, what is it that they saw on social that they liked, or on Facebook or Twitter or whatever channel they're looking at, and then how do we apply that to our market. You know, an example being something that we didn't do for prospects, but we did for customers, to the point of you need to keep and renew your customers. We were thinking, here are customers, travel managers, they're furloughed, the news is grim, mental health matters. How do get some sunshine if you're in a place that has sun, vitamin D, try to get out while socially distancing. And we thought of we called it Project Sunshine. And what we did is we worked with our CSMs to give us a list of our travel managers and have them opt in to give us their address. And we sent them picnic baskets. And we put a little note in there just saying, get some sunshine, take care of yourself, take a break, get some fresh air. If it's your backyard, your balcony, your living room, wherever you can do it safely. And we had such an amazing response to that. People were, we just got some really amazing stories back that we were also then able to share with the company, which got us excited and motivated. We had one woman, actually her, boyfriend proposed to her while they were doing the picnic with the picnic basket. So she was excited to share this story, and she'll always remember that. We had others love it so much. They said, hey, who'd you source these picnic baskets from? Can you introduce? We actually want to send it to our employees now. We were so thankful and excited to do it that we thought, this is something we should do for our own employees. It was things like that can you come up with something that really matters in the moment and what people are dealing with that sort of surprise them or get their attention? We worked with companies like Sendoso, who has pivoted their model to help you capture information securely and privately, so you could send something direct to them versus because they're not in the office. And just creative things that we've come up with to, we send hand sanitizer, we send kits out to be safe. We send little plants. Succulents are great. They're easy to ship. They don't take a lot of water, and they set out on people's tables, and you can put your logo on the plant, and who's going to throw away a living plant, right? They're going to put it out, maybe water it, and be reminded, what are the little things that you can do that get someone's attention? Or, whiskey tastings or wine tastings. I've just seen a lot of creative things happen that help you bond with your customers and your prospects. And that is something that I think will always will last through this, how we connect with people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think going back to just the surprise and delight actually goes so far, especially in the times that we're dealing with. And you may have already kind of answered that question with this case study, but I'm wondering if there's been a particularly rewarding or encouraging moment that's really stuck out to you through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, two things. Pass the plane, which I talked a little bit about before, just the bonding with my own team, my own family, prospects, customers, partners, like doing something that's uplifting. I think Project Sunshine, also another just great kind of experience with our customers. Just finding ways to get attention, bond, and send something out have all been things that I definitely encourage. And they take a little creativity, but they're also fun. I find direct mail can be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. What was your strategy in trying to make sure that you guys didn't come across as tone deaf or, waiting too? I know you didn't wait too long, because that was the other kind of option or scare for a lot of companies, was not making a move, not making a stance. So how did you guys go about making sure you didn't come across as tone deaf? Because I think we've all seen kind of there were some companies that missed the mark on that. Very big companies, smart companies, successful companies. What did you guys do to make sure that you didn't come across as tone deaf, and that you were constantly updating your messaging depending on the mood of the country and the mood globally as well?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I have a bias to action. I did see a lot of companies just step back. A lot of marketers, CMOs just were like, I don't even want to touch this right now. We're going to lay low and see what happens. I always err, unfortunately, on the side of executing, taking action. I always feel like there's something you could do, if there's no wind, row. Like I am a rower, so um, I, I just, I don't want to say became obsessed, but I was just top of mind constantly. What can we do? What do we need to do? What's happening in the market? Making sure you have a feedback loop. We're going to test. I mean, marketing is test and fail. There's plenty of things that you do that don't hit the mark, and you learn quickly and you keep going. But I think not playing at all is not the right choice. Now, if you have a product that just isn't going to work and is totally tone deaf, that's different. I felt like we had something that people needed at that time, and it was just the right way to approach it. Um, and so, I mean, I think you've got to, when you test anything, you have to monitor the results and quickly change and pivot. That's part of being the agile side. So having a feedback loop and moving quickly and learning quickly, failing fast, all the things you hear are what allows you to do this. And we
Right.
have a choice, right? I mean, you survive or die. Some of these industries are dying, right? There's some industries that will never come back, unfortunately. And
Yep.
so also I think just strong survival instinct.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and I had another question just about like the mental health of, people within the organization and how you guys are approaching remote working and keeping people, as happy as you can, the people who work for you.
Yeah, I mean, our HR team has definitely been busy setting up, the right policies, setting up the right access to health services and making sure everyone's aware of them. Um, we've given several just mental health days. Back in July, we gave a couple days off. That one, when a lot of activity around Black Lives Matter, making sure people had the time they want and need to do something if they'd like. Giving a day off near July 4th to extend weekends. We've been giving 3 and 4 day weekends to let people recharge, because we did go through some very heavy lifting and we have been working so hard. So I definitely think there's a balance and making sure that people have a balance, um, making sure they know of the resources that are available to them. And also you've got to have a light at the end of the tunnel, and your goals that you're working towards. I mean, I think it's also a test of leaders. Good leaders figure out how to help and motivate and their teams and celebrate small wins, right? We've had a lot of great small wins. We've had a lot of great large wins. And that balance of driving, but also celebrating to keep going. So I think that's all part of it. One of the questions in here is, for regular consumers, will they use travel services akin to yours? I mean, for our product specifically, we're for businesses, but if your business uses our product, you can also use it for personal travel. As part of it, you get access to all the same booking content and travel agency support for free. So yes, consumers of our customers can use it. But also there's lots of other services out there. But I do, I see personal travel. I can see Facebook people are traveling for the summer in some areas, a lot of domestic travel.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. I think that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. To everybody who joined us, thanks for popping in. We hope that you had fun and you learned a couple things along the way. Just a reminder that everyone's going to get a copy of today's recording and the presentation. And be on the lookout for our next webinar featuring Shauna Thomas, the Content Development Executive at Quibi, and James Williams, Executive Director of Digital Strategy at PBS NewsHour, an old friend of Green Buzz Agency. They're going to be talking about capitalizing on changing the ways we consume content on August 13th. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure a lot of great takeaways will be in there. And then finally, an enormous thank you to you, Meagan, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.